Hey guys. Okay, so I need your help to decide what I'm gonna play after I finish with Pokemon Yellow. Obviously, I'll be playing red and blue, or red and green to finish out my Pokedex. Likely green since I've never played that one before. All that said, I also need to play something else. It can't all be first gen Pokemon. So this is where I turn to you guys. In this video, I'll run through all my games and ask you to put your vote in the comments. We'll start with Nintendo games, then Super Nintendo, then Game Boy Color, then PlayStation, and end with PS2. Okay, so Nintendo games. I got this machine from the ex of a friend. It's not an original Nintendo, obviously, but it plays original Nintendo games as well as Famicom cartridges. I don't have any Famicom cartridges, but plan to buy some soon. Until then, this section is going to be a little light. However, I did want to note that I tested out each console to make sure it works, and this Generation Next machine was a little glitchy, or actually really glitchy. I looked in the cartridge slot and saw that the pin connector was not quite sitting right. So I opened the machine up and found that the plastic frame that the pin connector sits in was broken. Not sure if you can see it on the machine, but I've circled it in red. uh, I was able to get the games to play just fine with it open. So I'm gonna try to find either a replacement piece or use plastic weld or something. But even if I can't fix it, I can still play. Okay, so for the Nintendo, I've only got three basic cartridges. Don't blame me for the condition. I got them from my friend's ex along with the console, and they need cleaned up desperately. So here we have the classic Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt combo. Unfortunately, I don't have the hardware for Duck Hunt, so for me, it's really just Super Mario Brothers. Then I've got Super Mario Brothers 2. Again, please don't judge me for the condition. And last, we have Super Mario Brothers 3. And that's really it for the Nintendo. So my Super Nintendo is actually the original console that my dad bought back in like 1991, 92, as is the instruction manual. Fun fact, you can call the numbers in the manual or on the machine, and it forwards on to the current Nintendo phone numbers. Anyways, this is the lengthiest list, so let's get started. Starting off with some games I purchased this year, I've got a trilogy, Super Star Wars, which I guess they didn't want to title it Super New Hope, even though the game came out way after the movie name was updated. Then we've got Super Empire Strikes Back and Super Return of the Jedi. This year, I also picked up Toy Story and Buster Bust Loose. As you can see, for Buster Bust Loose, the box is in terrible condition, but the cartridge and the instruction booklet are mint. I'm super stoked to try this one because I remember a friend when I was a kid who had Acme All Stars on Sega Genesis, and I loved it. Anyways, I always wanted a Sega. You know, they had the better version of Bomberman and Sonic and all that. I also have Zombie Ate My Neighbors. It's one I picked up a few years ago out of nostalgia. Another game that I played at a friend's house but never owned as a child. I've also got Lord of the Rings Volume 1. I checked and they had planned on a Volume 2 but never released it because Volume 1 had such poor reception. I'm sad about that now, but maybe once I play this one, I won't be. Okay, so then here's a set that should be a trilogy. I don't know where my third one went. We've got Donkey Kong Country and then Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest. I have no idea where my Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble went, or why it's not with all my game stuff. Maybe I traded it in at some point. I don't know. Moving on to older games that I already had in my library, The Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. I remember this one being fun, but like most of my games, never finishing it. There's also The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. This is the only Zelda game that I've got for the Super Nintendo, although I do have another one for my Game Boy Color that you'll see later. And then there's Lion King. As you can see, I've still got the manual for this one. This was actually the first movie I ever saw in theaters. I remember jumping at the intro when Scar smashes his paw down on the mouse and crying when Mufasa died. It was the movie for me. Yeah, I had the bed sheets, the piano sheet music later on this game. Really fun. Never made it more than a few levels in. Okay, so back to some classics. We've got Super Mario World. My dad was a pro at this. I marvel at the way he made it through Bowser's Castle, something that I've been unable to do to this day. Although now that I'm an adult, maybe I'll have better luck. Then we've got Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island with its adorable graphics and gameplay, and of course, Super Mario Kart. Kids these days have no idea how easy their courses are compared to the Rainbow Road we drove back in the day. And we've got Tetris Attack, which does feature Yoshi and a few other familiar faces. Speaking of Tetris, I've got Tetris 2, along with some other non story games, such as On the Ball, where you have to kind of tilt the play arena to get the ball to the finish line, Zoop with its wacky colors and shapes, and then there's Monopoly. If we go with any of these, since they aren't storyline based, we'll definitely need to pick another game or two in addition to them. I just can't only play non storyline games. Back to those non-storyline, non-puzzle games. I've got Mortal Kombat 3, which apparently at one point had been rented out of First Stop Video before making its way to the store that I got it from. We had this back when I was a kid, probably traded in at GameStop, something else to get it. And then finally, I've got another game that I just picked up, Aladdin, which I remember playing either this or the Sega Genesis Aladdin at a friend's place. So I think this one will also be fun. That's it for the SNES. Now on to the Game Boy Color games. I do still have my original Game Boy Color that I got for Christmas somewhere around, I don't know, 2000 ish. However, I won't be able to record the gameplay if I play on my Game Boy Color, so I've got this nifty little Super Game Boy cartridge that I've been using for Pokemon Yellow. All I gotta do is put the Game Boy Color game into the cartridge and put that into the Super Nintendo, and voila. I think it works with most games, although ones that require movement, such as Koto Koto Kirby, won't work with it. So I haven't included that game in this list. As I said before, in addition to Pokemon Yellow that I'm playing right now, I've also got Green, Blue, and Red for the first generation. And then I've got Silver, Gold, and Crystal. All of these are the Japanese versions. But I want you to pick something else besides Pokemon because I know I'm going to be playing Green concurrently with another title. I just really wanted to show these off because I think they're cool. I've also got non-storyline Pokemon games. Pokemon Pinball is one of them. If you put a battery into it, it has its own rumble pack, but of course that won't work when plugged into the Super Game Boy cartridge. Actually, I probably should have tested to see if this will work in the Super Game Boy cartridge. Anyways, and then I also picked up recently the Pokemon trading card game for Game Boy Color. Although I'm not really sure what to expect from that one. As for the non Pokemon games, one of the options is The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, which is a complement to one of the SNES titles you saw earlier. Another complement is Lion King Simba's Mighty Adventure, which I haven't played yet. And then Saga. This one's in Japanese, and given that I don't know anything about it, I think it might potentially be too challenging for me. I don't know. I haven't done any real research on it, but I believe it's an RPG because I've seen mention of it having connection with the original Final Fantasy game. So it could be exciting. Then there's Kirby's Dream Land. I think my brother had the second one, the sequel to this back in the day. And then I've got Harvest Moon, which I've played Harvest Moon Island of Happiness on the DS and just loved it. So I'm hoping this one is fun too. Okay, so that's it for Nintendo brand consoles and games. Now on to Sony. This was my husband and stepdaughter's PlayStation, and I've never played it. So the games in this category will be all new to me. Looks like Crash Bandicoot was the last game either he or his daughter played. I've seen videos of Crash Bandicoot, and it looked like fun. I think, back in the day, it was PlayStation was such a improvement on the graphics of the old style games. So, um, yeah. We've also got Frogger, which I think maybe I tried on PC once. Rugrats, Search for Reptar. I loved Rugrats as a kid, so this might be fun. And then there's also Mary Kate and Ashley Magical Mystery Mall. Please, 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 please don't pick this one. I really have absolutely no desire to play it. We've also got A Bug's Life, which is another fun childhood movie. Then we've got Gran Turismo 2. This is my husband's favorite racing game. And lastly, Driver, which I'd never heard of until opening their box of games. Okay, so now we get to the PlayStation 2, which I only purchased just before the PS4 came out. Until then, I only had SNES and Game Boy Color. I guess I've just always been behind the times. The one on the left, the black console, belonged to my husband and stepdaughter, whereas the one in the middle, the silver one, was the one that I bought. Lot smaller. Um, Actually, the hookup in back for the power is different from the PS2, the original PS2. Anyways, looks like I left the last game I played in my PS2, like they did for the PlayStation. It was Need for Speed Most Wanted. And then when I was testing the consoles to make sure they worked, I also found Jack 2 in their PS2. Since I'd already assembled the slides before I found it, I'm just going to include it on this slide here. I never played Jack 1, and I don't really know anything about 1 or 2. Since we ended PlayStation on racing, let's start PS2 the same. Need for Speed Most Wanted. This is my favorite racing game. I had the whole Need for Speed series at one point for PS2, but this is the only one I kept. I made it about halfway through the blacklist, but that's it. As I said, I never finished games, but I did have some sick moves, if I do say so myself. Um, then I've got ATV 2, Off Road Fury, which was fun to play around with, and Gran Turismo 4, which I got for my husband and ended up playing myself. It's too different from Gran Turismo 2 for him, and I'm just really good at racing, so I beat him. Anyways, and then the last one is the Getaway Black Monday. That was my stepdaughter, so I haven't played that one. Other games that were hers that I've never played are Bully, Bullworth Academy, and Monster House. I actually just watched Monster House this year. It was pretty good. Of course, when I bought my PS2, I had to pick up Mortal Kombat Armageddon. And then I also bought Namco Museum 50th Anniversary when I picked up GT4 because I thought my husband might appreciate it. Well, that's it for the games. I do have an Xbox 360, but I feel those games are too new. Of course, they're totally dated now. But, anyways, please put your vote in the comments for what you'd like to see me play next. When I upload this, I'll try to remember to list the time increments in the description for those who'd like to jump back to specific consoles. But in the meantime, I've also listed the different games above according to their release dates or approximate release dates, since I might be off on some of them. A note on the Japanese Game Boy Color games. I tried to remember to list the Japan release date instead of the North America release date, but I may have slipped up a couple of times. Of course, I probably slipped up with the other games too, so take all this info with a grain of salt. Anyways, that's it. Sorry for the long video, but I hope that you guys pick out something interesting, some interesting games for me. Feel free to pick a couple in case I run into technical difficulties with any of them. Catch you later.